The wind howled across the barren Nebraska fields, kicking up dust that stung like needles against Clara's face. She was 16, small for her age, and her left leg dragged behind her, braced in a clunky metal contraption that creaked with every step. The kids at Lincoln High called her Cripple Clara, their laughter slicing deeper than the wind ever could. But today, as she limped toward the rusted gate of her family's failing farm, something was different. A glint of steel flashed in her eyes. Not tears, but something fiercer, something dangerous. Hey, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next, because trust me, this story's about to take you somewhere you never expected. Clara's life wasn't supposed to be like this. Born on a sprawling farm that once fed half the county, she was the youngest of three, the only girl, and the only one who survived the accident. 5 years ago, a tractor rollover had taken her parents and left her leg shattered. Her brothers, Jake and Ely, were older, already out in the world when it happened. They sent money when they could, but the farm was hers to keep alive, along with her grandmother May, who was as tough as the oak trees lining their property. The townsfolk pitied Clara, whispered about her limp, her threadbare clothes, and the way she carried the weight of a dying legacy on her narrow shoulders. But pity was a thin veil for cruelty, especially at school. Lincoln High was a battlefield. The popular kids, led by Tessa Morgan, ruled the halls like royalty. Tessa was everything Clara wasn't: blonde, confident, and viciously perfect. Her family owned half the town, and she wore that power like a crown. To Tessa, Clara was a punching bag, a nobody whose existence offended her sense of order. It started small. Snickers about Clara's brace, notes slipped into her locker with words like "frake" scrawled in pink ink. But by junior year, it had escalated. Tessa and her crew, Brock, the football star with a mean streak, and Kaylee, Tessa's shadow, made Clara's life hell. They'd trip her in the cafeteria, spill her books in the mud, and once during gym, Tessa accidentally knocked Clara into a ditch, laughing as she struggled to climb out. The teachers, they looked the other way. Tessa's dad was on the school board, after all. Clara took it in silence, not because she was weak, but because she had no choice. The farm was bleeding money, and every ounce of her energy went to keeping it afloat. She'd wake at 4 a.m. to feed the chickens, repair fences, and haul water to the few crops still clinging to life. May helped, but her hands shook with age, and Clara refused to let her do too much. School was just a gauntlet to survive until she could get back to the farm, where the world made sense. But even there, the weight of it all was crushing her. The bank was circling, threatening to foreclose. The neighbors, once friends, now looked at her with pity or greed, waiting for the land to go up for auction. And Tessa, she knew about the farm's troubles. Her dad was the one pushing the bank to seize it. One October morning, everything changed. Clara was in the school parking lot, her backpack heavy with books she'd borrowed from the library to study crop yields. Tessa and her crew were waiting by Brock's truck, their laughter sharp as glass. "Hey, Cripple Clara," Tessa called, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "Heard your farm's going under. Maybe you can sell that brace for scrap metal." Brock snorted, and Kaylee tossed a soda can at Clara's feet, the sticky liquid splashing her worn boots. Clara's cheeks burned, but she kept walking, her limp more pronounced under the weight of her bag. That's when Tessa stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "You don't belong here," she said, her eyes cold. "Why don't you just disappear?" Before Clara could respond, Brock shoved her. Hard she hit the asphalt, her brace twisting painfully, and her books scattered like leaves. The crowd that had gathered laughed, phones out, recording her humiliation. Clara's vision blurred, not from tears, but from something else. A heat rising in her chest, a pulse like a drum beat. She pushed herself up, ignoring the pain shooting through her leg, and met Tessa's gaze. For a split second, Tessa flinched. There was something in Clara's eyes, something that didn't belong to a broken farm girl. But Tessa recovered quickly, tossing her hair and walking away, her crew trailing behind. Clara gathered her books, her hands trembling, not with fear, but with a decision. She was done being their victim. That night, under the flickering light of the farmhouse kitchen, Clara sat with May. The old woman's eyes, sharp despite her years, studied her granddaughter. "You've got that look," May said, her voice low. "Same one your daddy had when he knew a fight was coming." Clara didn't answer right away. She was thinking about the box in the attic, the one she'd found years ago but never opened. Her father's box, locked tight, with a note in his handwriting for Clara, when she's ready. She'd always thought it was just old farm tools or family papers. But now, with Tessa's cruelty burning in her mind, she wondered if it was something more. Clara climbed the creaky attic stairs, her brace clanking against the wood. The box was there, tucked under a tarp, its metal edges rusted but intact. She pried it open, her heart pounding. Inside wasn't what she expected. No tools, no papers. Instead, there were knives. Gleaming, perfectly balanced throwing knives, their handles worn from use. A leather journal lay beneath them, its pages filled with her father's tight scrawl. She flipped it open, her breath catching. It wasn't a farmer's journal. It was a record of missions, targets, and techniques. Her father, the quiet man who'd taught her to plant corn and fix fences, had been something else entirely, a soldier, a warrior, a man trained to kill. The journal detailed his past as a covert operative, a life he'd left behind when he met Clara's mother. He'd trained in secret, even after retiring, and the knives were his. There were notes about Clara, too, how he'd seen her strength, even as a child, and how he'd planned to teach her when she was older. The accident had stolen that chance. But the journal was clear: you're stronger than you know, Clara. The fight's in your blood. She sat there for hours, reading, her fingers tracing the knive's edges. By dawn, she knew what she had to do, not just to survive, but to fight back. Clara started training. Every night, after the farm chores were done, she'd slip into the barn, where she'd set up targets, old boards, hay bales, even a rusted tractor wheel. She taught herself to throw the knives, her father's journal as her guide. At first, her aim was wild, the blades clattering uselessly to the ground. Her leg brace made it hard to balance, but she adapted, using her core strength to compensate. Within weeks, she could hit a target dead center from 20 feet. The knives felt like extensions of her will, each throw a release of the rage she'd buried for years. May watched in silence, never questioning, only nodding when Clara's aim grew sharper. School didn't get easier, but Clara carried herself differently. Tessa noticed, her taunts growing sharper, as if she sensed a shift but couldn't place it. One day in the cafeteria, Tessa upped the ante. She'd gotten her hands on a foreclosure notice. Stolen, Clara suspected, from her father's bank connections, and waved it in front of everyone. "Look at this," Tessa crowed. "Clara's farm is done. She'll be living in a trailer by Christmas." The room erupted in laughter, but Clara didn't flinch. She stood, her brace creaking, and walked straight up to Tessa. The room went quiet. "You're wrong," Clara said, her voice steady, "and you're going to regret this." Tessa laughed, but it was forced. Something in Clara's calm unnerved her. The real turning point came at the town's annual harvest festival. It was a big deal in Lincoln, a chance for the community to pretend they were all one big, happy family. Clara's family had always had a booth, selling whatever crops they could scrape together. This year, Clara insisted on going despite May's warnings. "Folks are cruel when they smell blood," May said. But Clara was done hiding. She set up the booth, her limp more pronounced from the long day, and waited. Sure enough, Tessa and her crew showed up, drawn like vultures. They mocked the wilted vegetables, the patched-up tablecloth, and Clara herself. Then Brock, egged on by Tessa, grabbed a basket of tomatoes and smashed it on the ground. The crowd gasped, but no one intervened. Tessa stepped forward, her smile vicious. "You're nothing, Clara. This farm, this booth, you. It's all pathetic." Clara didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just reached under the table, where she'd hidden one of her father's knives. Not to use it. Not yet. But to feel its weight, its promise. She stood, her eyes locked on Tessa's. "You're wrong," she said again, and this time the crowd felt it too. A ripple of unease spread. Tessa faltered, then recovered, tossing her hair. "Whatever, freak, enjoy your last festival." She turned to leave, but Clara's voice stopped her. "There's a game tonight," Clara said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "The knife throwing contest. I'm entering." "You should too, Tessa. Unless you're scared." The crowd buzzed. Knife throwing was a festival tradition, a nod to the town's pioneer roots. Tessa couldn't back down without losing face. "Fine," she snapped. "I'll wipe the floor with you." The stage was set. That night, the festival grounds were packed. The knife-throwing contest was held under bright floodlights, with targets set at increasing distances. Clara had practiced for this, not just in the barn but in her mind, visualizing every throw. Tessa, meanwhile, had spent the day bragging about how she'd humiliate Clara once and for all. The rules were simple: 3 throws per person, best accuracy wins. Tessa went first, her throws decent but sloppy, the knives wobbling as they hit the outer rings. The crowd clapped politely. Then it was Clara's turn. She stepped forward, her brace glinting under the lights. The crowd whispered, some with pity, others with scorn. Clara blocked it all out. She pulled one of her father's knives from her belt, its blade catching the light. Her first throw was perfect, the knife sinking dead center into the target. The crowd gasped. Her second throw was even better, splitting the first knife's handle. By the third, the crowd was on its feet, cheering, as the knife hit so precisely it seemed to defy physics. Tessa's face was pale, her confidence shattered. Clara didn't just win, she dominated. But Clara's victory at the festival wasn't the end of her fight. It was the spark that lit a fire in the town. The weeks that followed saw whispers turn into stories, and stories into legends. Clara, the girl who'd been invisible or mocked, was now someone people couldn't stop talking about. Kids at school started looking at her differently, some with awe, others with unease. Even the teachers, who'd once ignored her, began to nod in respect when she passed. But Clara wasn't done. The knife-throwing contest had given her a stage, but the real battle was for her farm, her family's legacy, and her own sense of self. She knew Tessa's humiliation would make her lash out harder, and she was right. Tessa's taunts didn't stop. They grew more desperate, more personal. But Clara was ready. She'd spent her nights not just throwing knives but rebuilding herself. She started a community project, something her father's journal had inspired, a co-op to help struggling farmers like her. She used the library's old computer to research grants, contacting her brothers for advice and rallying neighbors who'd written her off. One cold November evening, Clara stood in the town hall, her brace clanking as she faced a room full of skeptical farmers. She'd prepared a presentation, her hands steady despite the stares. "We're stronger together," she said, her voice clear. "My farm's on the edge, just like many of yours. But if we pool our resources, seeds, equipment, knowledge, we can fight back against the banks and the big ag companies." The room was silent at first, the air thick with doubt. Then Old Man Carter, whose own land was at risk, stood up. "Girls got grit," he said. "I'm in." One by one, others joined, farmers, shopkeepers, even a few kids from school who'd seen Clara's fire at the festival. The co-op was born, not just as a plan but as a movement. Clara spent hours organizing, her leg aching from long days, but each meeting brought new allies. She taught kids like Sam, a shy freshman who'd been bullied too, how to repair fences and plant crops, channeling her father's lessons. She even invited Tessa to join, a calculated move to show she wasn't afraid. Tessa scoffed, but Clara saw the crack in her armor, the fear of being left behind. The co-op's first success came when they secured a small grant, enough to buy shared equipment. Clara's farm got a new irrigation pump, and for the first time in years, the fields showed green. The townsfolk started calling her Warrior Clara, a nickname that made her blush but also fueled her. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for everyone who'd been pushed down. The co-op meetings became a place of hope, where people shared stories of loss and resilience, and Clara realized her father's strength wasn't just in the knives, but in the way he'd believed in community. She kept one knife in her boot, not for violence but as a reminder she was never powerless again. As winter gripped the Nebraska plains, Clara's transformation deepened, weaving her into the fabric of Lincoln in ways she never imagined. The co-op wasn't just saving farms, it was mending the town's fractured spirit. Clara organized workshops on sustainable farming, drawing on her library books and her father's journal for innovative ideas like crop rotation that resisted droughts. Neighbors who'd once eyed her land with envy now shared their own secrets. Mr. Ellis taught her about heirloom seeds, and Mrs. Ramirez showed how to build low-cost greenhouses from recycled materials. Clara's brace, once a symbol of weakness, became a badge of endurance. Kids imitated her determined limp in playful admiration. But challenges loomed. Tessa, seething from her festival defeat, spread rumors online, calling Clara a cheater and her co-op a scam. Posts went viral in local groups, painting Clara as a manipulator using her disability for sympathy. Clara felt the sting, her old insecurities resurfacing like weeds in the fields. One stormy night, she confronted the doubt alone in the barn, throwing knives until her arm burned. Each thud echoing her resolve. May found her there, rain drumming on the tin roof. "Pain's a teacher, child," May said, handing her a hot mug of tea. "But you don't let it define you." Inspired, Clara pivoted. She hosted an open farm day, inviting the whole town, including Tessa, to see the co-op in action. Skeptics came, expecting failure, but found thriving seedlings, shared tools, and stories of revival. Sam, the shy kid, gave a nervous speech about how Clara had helped him stand up to his own bullies. Even Brock showed up, awkward and silent, helping load hay without a word. Tessa arrived last, her face a mask of defiance, but as she watched Clara demonstrate knife sharpening, not for show, but as a metaphor for honing one's edge, something shifted. Clara approached her privately. "This isn't about winning," Clara whispered. "It's about surviving. Join us or keep fighting alone." Tessa didn't respond, but she didn't sabotage either. The event raised funds for more grants and the co-op expanded, partnering with nearby counties. Clara's brothers visited, Jake bringing business savvy from the city, Eli with mechanical know-how to fix tractors. They marveled at her growth, Jake admitting, "Dad would be proud. You're the warrior he always saw." Clara's legs still ached, but she moved with purpose, her limp a rhythm of resilience. The farm bloomed, not just with crops but with community bonds. Clara started journaling her own entries, adding to her father's legacy, notes on leadership and forgiveness. She even mentored others, like a young girl with a stutter who reminded her of herself. Through it all, the knives stayed hidden, symbols of inner strength rather than weapons. Clara realized true power wasn't in confrontation, but in uplifting others, turning personal pain into collective triumph. As snow blanketed the fields, promising a fertile spring, Clara stood tall, her warrior spirit igniting hope across the heartland. The final showdown came in the alley behind the school, where Tessa and her crew cornered Clara one dark night. Brock had a bat and Kaylee was filming, ready to post Clara's next humiliation online. "You think you're tough now?" Tessa hissed, stepping closer. "You're still nothing." Clara's heart raced, but not from fear. She'd brought one knife, tucked into her boot. She didn't want to use it, but she was ready. What Tessa didn't know was that Clara had been preparing for more than just a physical fight. Her father's journal had taught her strategy, not just skill. She'd spent weeks gathering dirt on Tessa's family, using the library's old records and her brother's connections. Tessa's dad wasn't just pushing to foreclose on Clara's farm. He was embezzling from the bank. Clara had proof, copied documents hidden in the farmhouse. As Tessa raised a hand to slap her, Clara spoke, her voice low and steady. "Hit me, and I send everything I know about your dad to the sheriff." "The bank's books don't lie, Tessa." Tessa froze. Brock lowered the bat. Kaylee's phone dropped to her side. Clara stepped forward, her brace clanking, but her posture was that of a warrior. "You don't own me," she said. "You don't own this town, and you're not taking my farm." Tessa's eyes darted, searching for a way out, but there was none. Clara had flipped the script. The bullies backed off, their power broken. Word spread fast. By the next week, Tessa's dad was under investigation, and the Morgans' grip on the town weakened. Clara's farm got a reprieve. The bank, now under scrutiny, extended her loan. But more than that, Clara changed. She wasn't just the disabled farm girl anymore. She was the girl who'd faced down her bullies, who'd turned her pain into power. The kids at school didn't dare mock her now. Some even joined the co-op, helping with chores, drawn by her quiet strength. Clara never threw a knife again, not in public. But she kept them sharp, a reminder of who she was and what she could do. May watched her with pride, knowing the blood of warriors ran through her veins. The farm wasn't saved yet, but Clara was fighting for it, just as she'd fought for herself. And every night, as she looked out over the fields her family had worked for generations, she felt her father's words in her bones. "You're stronger than you know." So, that's Clara's story. A girl who turned her scars into strength, who faced down cruelty and came out on top. What about you? From which part of the country are you watching this video? Drop it in the comments below, and let's keep this conversation going. If you loved this story, give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, stay strong.